Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here, as always. We're here today on a Total Wellness Tuesday, episode 1677. And I mentioned that number right off the bat because there is going to be a lot of research, links, graphics, you name it, over on that show notes page. Because today we are talking about a topic that will never get mentioned by the popular media. And that is because the media, your favorite news outlet, TV channel, etc., is bought and paid for by big food, big pharma, big agri, you name it. So their advertising dollars essentially pay for their business. Businesses are not going to turn away whoever it is that obviously is keeping the lights on. Now, this is why, though, they'll never share with you this topic of hidden meat glue, also referred to as pink slime. I've mentioned this a couple years ago on the show, but now more than ever, this is a topic we need to be talking about. And that is because it is showing up in more and more foods and actually leading to a host of digestive issues as well as autoimmune issues in people. So the other reason why I want to bring this up today is because there are many people out there doing their absolute best, meaning their absolute best to eat gluten-free, to do more of a maybe paleo, maybe autoimmune-based protocol. But then they're eating foods, even people on carnivore-based diets or keto-based diets, they're eating foods that still contain this hidden additive. Why do I say hidden? It's because it does not need to be added to the label, if you can believe it. This is a dangerous substance that's made from bacteria or extracts from guinea pig liver, or more recently from the actual plasma, the blood plasma of cows or pigs. So you have to understand is that we're looking at a specific bacteria, which oftentimes it's extracted from. This is called Streptoverticillium, and it's essentially turned into or created this thing called microbial transglutaminase. So it's just MTG. If you hear me say MTG throughout the show, well, it's just basically microbial transglutaminase or just transglutaminase. Now, why do I bring this up and why was this show done specifically after we did a show on glutamate? So it was called The Hidden Food Additive That Affects Your Health. So please check that out. That was episode 1663. Because this product here, transglutaminase and glutamate that I talked about on episode 663, MSG, etc., those types of things added to a lot of condiments out there and other sweeteners, etc., they're absolutely affecting people's mood, their mindset, their neurology, and of course their gut. Well, transglutaminase can also break down into specific parts of glutamic acid, which can also affect the glutamate levels in the body. So it can hurt children with autism or learning-based issues. It can absolutely affect adults mood-wise too, brain fog, immune, gut issues, etc. So what is this thing called meat glue, aka pink slime, because that's what it looks like, or aka microbial transglutaminase? Well, the actual scientific term for it is transglutaminase. Okay, so we're going to call it that, MTG, but in the industry called meat glue or pink slime. And the reason why it's called pink slime is literally this bacteria that's created that binds proteins together or binds foods together. And that's why it's also called glue, right? And so it works so well, though, by taking, let's just say, scraps of unused chicken or meat. And essentially you add it to all the scraps and you roll it together. And then you put it in a refrigerator. And a couple hours later, well, you take it out and it actually looks like a full piece of chicken or chicken breast. And that is what many restaurants use. So they're buying much cheaper versions of steak. There's a lot more than just steak and chicken. Believe me, there's a lot of other foods on this. So I'm going to get to those in a moment. But they're basically buying these cheaper versions of these meats just from scraps that weren't used or nobody wanted, or it wasn't a good part of the cut of meat. They're broken down. They're essentially melded together. And it looks like, one piece of chicken. And that is, for the most part, what you're getting in even a lot of the healthy chicken nuggets. And I feel bad saying that because I know that there's a lot of parents out there doing gluten-free, which we need to get to in a moment, gluten-free chicken nuggets out there, and they're organic. And so the problem is you have to contact the company and just say, do you use transglutaminase in your products? And that's why I don't want to throw all of these companies under the bus, and I never name individual companies, but what I want to do is take you through all of the effects now that this can have. And this is really important to look at it, because how many people out there are suffering from celiac or IBS or Crohn's or some type of digestive-based issue that we now know transglutaminase causes a greater degree of inflammation in the gut. So let's break down exactly right now why this happens, what it looks like, and then what foods they're in, and of course, what you can do about it, because we never want to present an issue without there also being an answer. And so that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. So I've done quite a bit of research now on this particular topic. I do want to let you know it came about to a greater degree because we actually test for it now on our food sensitivity test that can be done right at home. So there's a food sensitivity test with almost 200 foods that you can be tested for. It all comes as part of the one lab, plus Candida. That, of course, we offer at equilibriumnutrition.com, or you could work with your local integrative health practitioner, naturopathic doctor, naturopath, etc. So, okay, why this came up is that we are now looking at this additive, and we've seen so many people sensitive to it. And of course, it's a food additive. I don't think it's good for anyone, but some people are exceptionally sensitive to it. So we have to be careful too, because the chance of bacteria in meat or dairy products or anything that this is added to as a thickener or glue, the chance of bacteria in that food product goes up dramatically. It's also been shown that these foods need to be cooked longer because the transglutaminase may not allow for more even cooking throughout the foods. I'm not a chef, I'm not an expert, but I am someone that looks at the research, and I will link up a 29-page research paper on transglutaminase. I mean, it's unbiased. It's just a natural look at it. And then for the side effects, of course, you can go into anything of what I'm talking about here today. So we know that it's a trigger for celiac for sure. We know that it is actually, even though it does not contain gluten, it is cross-reactive with gluten. Here's what I mean by that. So there's people out there, they're on a gluten-free diet. Many people, of course, many people that I work with, I'm on a gluten-free diet except for my cheat meal, which is full of gluten. It's gluten full instead of gluten free. But of course, again, I've overcome my particular issues. Life is good. If I have a cheat meal with one of those things in it, it's okay. But here's the thing. You can have a gluten-free meal, but if it contains MTG, then your body perceives it as gluten and still has the same reaction. And it's especially bad if you have something like celiac disease. This is extremely important to look at it. And I hypothesize it's probably going to be the same with an autoimmune issue such as Hashimoto's. So the crazy thing is, of course, it does not need to be put on labels. I'm going to tell you how to circumvent all of this towards the end of the show. I also look at, what is the European Union? Like, what are they doing over in Europe? Do they allow this food? Because they don't allow a lot of these GMOs and all of these different toxins in Europe. They have about 8,000 toxins compared to the almost 100,000 toxins here in the U.S. So it's much, much less. They actually care about their people a little bit more. That's kind of nice to see. On cigarette packages in huge letters, it says this product will essentially kill you. I mean, it's very, very different than even here in the U.S. Not that that stops a whole lot of people, because there are plenty of people that smoke in Europe, but at least they're trying to do something. So, but in 2010, the EU, the European Union, outlawed the additive, showing that it had a high risk in terms of health and low benefit. Well, that's, again, fantastic that the European Union looking out for their people. The other thing that we know is that it increases gut permeability. And that's simply because it creates inflammation as well. So it's a non-grain causing gluten-based inflammation. And then we know that these types of issues can then lead to autoimmune-based problems. Part of it is that we're essentially creating new proteins. We're binding a protein from this animal to a protein from this animal. Because remember, the chicken or the red meat or whatever it might be, or the pork, it doesn't necessarily mean it's from the same animal. You could have meat from thousands of cows go into ground beef or go into a chicken nugget. It's just the leftovers, right? That we're gelling together with this glue, with this pink slime. And so you're taking the DNA, the material from one animal and the other animal, sticking it together. We don't actually know the immune response that that's causing in the body. The body is not used to seeing this type of protein melded together with this particular bacteria or blood plasma from a cow or pig, or from again, they don't use it as much anymore, but from the liver extracts from a guinea pig. So we do know that this is causing immune-based reactions, and especially bad for anyone with immune issues, inflammatory issues, gut issues, and I would say, of course, celiac as well. So now what I'd like to do is share with you where these foods are typically found, or where transglutaminase is typically found. And then we'll talk about, well, how do we avoid this in general, right? Okay, so let me pull up my little graphic here. This graphic, and I'm going to take it by category. Meat first, it can be found, now again, not always, of course, not always, but it can be found in steak, chicken nuggets, chicken pieces, hot dogs, sausages, fillets, roasts, cutlets, meaning like if you're just getting like chicken cutlets or things like that, and you don't know necessarily where it's from, it's not from a local farm, well, and it looks like one piece of chicken cutlet doesn't mean that it is. That's the issue, and they don't necessarily have to tell you. Sliced ham or deli meats, pizza toppings, boneless wings, meaning like it might be breaded, but there's just some chicken in there. Well, again, it could be from multiple chicken. Boneless ribs, roast beef, pastrami, again, any deli meat, turkey included, and gyros as well. Okay, so those are the meats. Processed meat for the most part, right? It's not your local grass-fed, grass-finished piece of, let's say steak or whatever it might be. It's not wild game meat like venison or elk or something like that. We're not talking about those things. We're not talking about a whole pastured chicken, right? That well, this is one whole chicken. There's not any transglutaminase in here. So I'll get to that more towards the end, but it's essentially from processed meats, which we know aren't healthy in the first place. Okay, dairy's up next. Yogurt, ice cream, fermented dairy products, creams, cheeses, frozen desserts, and dressings with dairy in them, okay? Does it mean that all yogurts have this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we're going to have to ask these manufacturers going forward now if they contain them. And we're doing the same. I'm doing the same for my family. So, all right, processed foods, kind of talked about this before, but believe it or not, tofu, which a lot of people are using on a vegan-based diet, could be using TMG, and that can actually be causing gluten-based reactions. I know it seems wild, but absolutely, absolutely possible. A lot of gluten-free foods, pastas and cereals as well. Less common, to be honest with you. More common in the meat, dairy, seafood than processed foods, but certainly common, especially with things that are congealed together like tofu. Okay, seafood, imitation crab, looking at fish sticks, fish balls, shrimp noodles, and crab cakes. So anything that's kind of, again, congealed together. So especially when they put a little breading around it, whether it be gluten-free or not, well, it kind of hides what's inside of that as well. So restaurants use this all the time as well for when combining meats together, let's say like something like a bacon-wrapped filet, when they are doing, let's say, like a turkey meatball or some meatballs, things like that, they can just congeal everything together. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It is a major health issue that is not being talked about. And I want to just simply give you right now what we can do about it, because I don't need to go on and on. I think you get the gist that this is something that does cause inflammation. It causes inflammation with your children. And I know that it's easy. Again, I'm a parent as well. I have a 6-year-old now. I have an 8-year-old now. are picky too with the foods that they eat. It's sometimes very easy to give them a lot of those foods that they'd be very happy eating. The problem is that it's typically never one dose. If you go to a party and your child had some, I don't know, chicken nuggets or whatever it might be, it's never that one time. The problem is that over time, it does cause an issue. Now, of course, if your child has any type of ASD or celiac or autoimmune issues, well, we don't even want that one time for sure. I know that one of my daughters is sensitive to any type of food dyes or higher levels of preservatives, those types of things. And I'm sure it has to do with genetic detox pathways, etc. But what I want to share with you is that's not really the most important thing. It's just that since we know that, we, even at parties, are not going to allow her to have something that we know is not good for her health. And yes, it is a harder decision. It's a harder choice to make. We obviously talk about the health benefits all the time in our home, and we still allow her to enjoy things like desserts, and we do flex meals for the whole family once a week. It's not that they can't do that, but on an ongoing daily basis, and I would even say weekly basis, to expose yourself or a child to these things does begin to fill up that rain barrel. And over time, then we cannot be surprised that we end up with some type of then diagnosed dis-ease of the body. Because that's what happens. It just happens over time. We fill up the rain barrel. We're exposed to stress. We're exposed to environmental pollutants and toxins that we can't necessarily control if we walk outside. We're exposed to sometimes cleaning products or bath products that we didn't really know contain these things because maybe we haven't looked into it as much. That's why I do really recommend you understand the concept of the rain barrel effect. If you haven't read the book yet, it's essentially free. I do recommend reading the book. 100% of profits do go to charity. Every single penny from that book. And it's simply to get people to realize that it's never one thing. It's never one thing that causes you to get sick, and it's never one thing that causes you to then get well. It's a multitude of things, and we don't have to be perfect. So that's why I always like to share with you. I want you to be good. Let me take that word back. I don't like the word good. I want you to follow a healthy lifestyle 90% of the time. Once you're well, if you're well, every 3 days, really, you could have a flex meal twice a week. You really could. On a Wednesday night and a Saturday night, or a Thursday night and a Saturday night. Just keep them 2 days apart. You really could. It's not going to be an issue for most people. Now, of course, if you see yourself start to slide or you have issues that next day, well, it's the particular food that you ate. Or, yeah, your body's only able to do it maybe once a week or every other week or whatever, again, works for you. So it's not that you can't be exposed to these things. Your body will be able to handle it if you're doing, of course, the right things 90% of the time. So what do we need to do? Well, there's two things. First of all, if you're giving your kids chicken nuggets, like a lot of people do, and they're organic and they're gluten-free, well, here's the thing. First, check it for glutamate. We want to make sure of that. That's important. And then let's contact the company to see if they use transglutaminase in their products. There's nothing wrong with contacting the company and just asking them. Maybe they can't show you anything proprietary, whatever it might be. You don't need to know that. You need to be able to trust these companies. And if they say no, well, then that has to be the truth, because if not, they're liable, right? They state no. Like at Equilibrium Nutrition, it's 100% no. There's no transglutaminase in any of our products, no matter what. 100% of the times, not in our whole food bars. Every single ingredient is on the label. Literally, it's all there, right? It's truth in labeling, which is what it should be. If something is in that product, put it on the label. And if you don't want to put it on the label, then it probably should not be in your product. So stop poisoning people is my voice to a lot of manufacturers out there. And again, we vote with our dollars. So if you don't buy these products, then companies will hopefully stop doing it. I know they'll never get to the point where they ban it like they do in the EU, in the United States, because we're not about the people here in the United States. We're about big business, and it's unfortunate, but at least we do have a voice. And the voice is we can support companies that do the right thing, and we can not support companies by basically not buying their products. So here's the thing. First, contact the company. Make sure it's transglutaminase free. I'll link up the actual wording and what the word is, and because nobody's going to say they have meat glue or pink slime in their products, even though that's really what it is. It's a slime. It is a glue that binds things together, makes them thicker, and again, allows them to produce the food a lot cheaper from fragments of other foods. But the second thing is this, and this is often the easiest thing, and it's really what I recommend. One, shop at your local farmer's market. If you're buying meat or fish or produce or dairy, You get to actually talk with the farmer and say, hey, how are these products made? Are your cows given antibiotics? Are your cows given hormones like growth hormone, recombinant bovine growth hormone, or are they given estrogen to fatten them up? What are they fed? Is it grass fed but then grain finished to fatten them up? Or is it green finished as well, right? Because it's not always grass, it's basically pastured. So then for the chickens, are those pastured or are they fed other additives like soy? And for dairy, well, again, it goes back to the health of the cow. So you really want to look at these specific things. You know, I'm not a huge advocate of cow's milk dairy for sure, because I see that it's the number one IgG food sensitivity. So I do recommend for you and your family that you do run a food sensitivity test. I run one yearly just to see if any new sensitivities have popped up. And remember, a food sensitivity does not cause necessarily bloating or gas or digestive issues. Remember, an IgG food sensitivity is a delayed latent reaction, which means it causes inflammation 24 to up to 72 hours. Like 3 days later, you know, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday, what did you eat on Sunday night? What did you eat on Monday morning that could be causing inflammation today? Brain fog, fatigue, etc. today. Joint pain. It's important to look at those things. And of course, you can test for meat glue. So that's just one of many. We can link that up, of course, today at stevencabral.com/1677. So you can at least look at the lab and you can work with us over at Equilibrium Nutrition, or you could work with your local practitioner as well. So, but again, that's not necessarily the point of today's show. It's always nice to know that you can open source your health, that you can take control of it. But here's the big thing that you can do. This is the big takeaway, is that you don't have to worry about transglutaminase, microbial transglutaminase, MTG, pink slime, or meat glue if you are eating a whole food, predominantly plant-based diet, right? You don't even have to worry about it. Because if you are getting, even if you're eating meats, again, chicken, I'm not saying not to. What I'm saying is, if you're getting a whole pastured chicken, it doesn't contain transglutaminase. If you're shopping at your local farmer's market or an online reputable retailer, you know it's not going to contain that. Same with fish. If you're not eating chicken nuggets and hot dogs and sausages, and you're not eating fish balls and fish sticks and crab cakes and imitation crab, and you're not doing a lot of dairy products in the first place, it's unlikely you ever come in contact with this. So that's the amazing thing, right? The amazing thing is that a predominantly plant-based whole food diet that you can see growing in nature pretty much eliminates a lot of these food additives, because when you look at the food, there's only one ingredient. When I see broccoli, I only see one ingredient. Oh, it's broccoli, right? When I see, let's say, bok choy, one of my favorites, it's just bok choy. When I look at those purple potatoes on my counter every single week, I see purple potatoes. Same with Japanese yams that I love, or a sweet potato. It's just one ingredient. Nobody glued that together. So it's really when we're looking at deli meats and chicken nuggets and hot dogs and sausages, all the easy things, right? All the easy things to cook, all the easy things to feed ourselves, feed our family. I know it takes a little bit more effort. I understand that. But I'm telling you, in the long run, it's always worth it. It really is. It's always worth it. It is easier. It is easier said than done, but I do believe it's worth it. And just remember, if you follow that 90% rule, you really will be okay. Head on over to stevencabral.com/1677 for research, for links, etc. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I appreciate you. And as always, if you believe this topic could help anybody else, please do feel free to forward them the show. Take care, everyone. I'll talk with you tomorrow. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.